The chamber of the Galactic Council glowed with the muted shimmer of holographic displays, each flickering image hovering above the crescent table of delegates. The room was vast, but the air inside felt compressed, heavy with the inertia of endless debate. Consuls from across the galaxy occupied their seats, draped in the elaborate robes and insignias of their respective worlds. Chancellor Elias Rennick sat among them, his posture stiff, his eyes fixed on the massive hologram that occupied the center of the chamber. A planet turned slowly, its surface bathed in the dull glow of encroaching starships. The colony below was little more than a pinprick beneath the looming shadow of an alien blockade. Silent icons marked communication arrays that had gone dark days ago. Provocations are still unconfirmed, a broad-shouldered alien consul announced, his voice layered with the mechanical undertone of a translator unit. His skin shimmered faintly, the dark red scales along his forehead reflecting the light of the projection. We must proceed carefully. Acting without full intelligence could destabilize the surrounding systems. Rennick's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, observing as murmurs of agreement spread across the room. Another voice joined the discussion. Consul Nezra, a tall, gaunt figure with pale violet skin stretched thin over sharp, angular features. I propose we await further reports. We do not yet know the true intent of the blockade. Diplomacy has resolved such matters before. The hologram shifted as a new transmission blinked into view. A vessel hung in orbit above the colony, its surface emblazoned with the jagged crest of the invading fleet. A harsh, guttural voice echoed through the chamber. The colony will surrender within 48 cycles. All human and allied personnel are to abandon the system or face eradication. The transmission cut abruptly. Silence followed. Elias let the moment linger before rising slowly to his feet. His gaze moved deliberately across the council. You've heard them. This is no diplomatic entanglement. It's an ultimatum. Consul Nezra barely lifted her gaze. Ultimatums are the language of posturing fleets, Chancellor Rennick. This blockade is a negotiation, not an execution. A soft ripple of approval hummed through the chamber. Rennick felt the weight of their complacency bearing down on him. And if you're wrong? His voice carried across the room with a controlled steadiness that cut through the tension like steel. If this isn't posturing, but a prelude to something far worse. Nezra's lips thinned, but she did not immediately respond. Consul Threll, a rotund alien with translucent skin and deep-set, pupilless eyes, leaned forward. We cannot act without authorization, Chancellor. Intervention requires consensus. Our fleets do not answer to individual wills. Elias met his gaze, unflinching. Our fleets exist to protect the lives of those who place their trust in us. There are colonists down there, families, who trusted humanity and its allies for security. I won't stand idle while they are threatened. A few heads turned, exchanging glances, but the room remained silent. Threll spread his hands in a placating gesture. We understand your concern, Chancellor, but this council must deliberate. It is the way of all things here. Elias's eyes narrowed. And while you deliberate, people die. His words landed like a hammer against glass. Nezra's eyes flicked downward. Threll shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Chancellor let the silence speak for him a moment longer before stepping away from the table. He turned his back to the council, moving toward the exit with measured strides. You do not have authorization to act, Threll called after him, his voice lacking the firmness it held moments before. The council's ruling is not yet final. Elias paused at the threshold, casting one last glance over his shoulder. His gaze met Threll's. I don't need your authorization. He exited the chamber, his footsteps echoing down the long marble corridor as the doors sealed shut behind him. The council chamber remained silent, save for the faint hum of the hologram still spinning lazily in the center of the room. The doors to the communications chamber sealed behind Chancellor Elias Rennick with a low hiss. The corridor outside the Galactic Council chambers was empty, save for the distant hum of engines resonating through the station's core. Rennick's stride was purposeful as he made his way toward the secured briefing room further down the hall. Inside the chamber, Rennick activated the comms interface, and the holographic table flickered to life. Two figures materialized above the table, Admiral Gregor Corbin and Admiral Bennett Strauss. Corbin's sharp, angular features appeared first, his arms crossed behind his back, while Strauss leaned slightly forward, his ever-calculating eyes studying Rennick from the projected image. "Chancellor," Corbin greeted, his tone formal but clipped. "We were expecting your call hours ago." "I was wasting time," Rennick replied flatly, adjusting the display to full resolution. "The Council believes diplomacy will unravel the blockade. They refuse to act." Strauss exchanged a glance with Corbin, but said nothing. Rennick planted his hands on the edge of the hollow table. The projection flickered slightly, zooming in on the cluster of enemy ships encircling the colony. "We aren't waiting for authorization. Mobilize a strike force immediately." Corbin's brow furrowed, though his expression betrayed no surprise. "Direct engagement will escalate this. The Council isn't stepping foot on that planet," Rennick interrupted, his voice firm. "We are." Strauss straightened, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "What size force are you suggesting?" "A small infiltration team," Rennick answered. "Stealth approach. The main fleet waits in reserve, out of sensor range. I want them ready to intervene the moment we get the signal." Corbin gave a slow nod. "That'll require a precision crew. We'll need a captain familiar with deep insertion tactics." "I've already made the choice," Rennick said. "Captain Phil Vren." Strauss let out a soft breath. "Vren? I thought he was done for good." "He's the best we have," Rennick replied without hesitation. "And he knows the terrain." Corbin adjusted the controls on his end. "I'll recall him to duty. He'll lead the infiltration team personally." Strauss leaned closer to the hologram. "We'll need insertion routes. The blockade is tight, but there's a debris field along the outer orbit. They can use that for cover." Rennick nodded. "Coordinate with Vren. Select a small escort. The goal is precision, not brute force." Corbin's holographic figure shifted slightly, his hand hovering over his console. "This will put the fleet on high alert. Once we move, there's no stepping back." "Let the Council deliberate," Rennick said, stepping away from the table. His gaze lingered briefly on the flickering colony below. "We'll save those people without their permission." Hours later, under the dim lighting of the UED dry dock, the infiltration vessels hummed with life. A sleek corvette, the Valiant, rested at the center of the bay, surrounded by personnel conducting pre-flight checks. Its matte black hull reflected the faint glow of the bay lights, designed for minimal sensor reflection. Captain Phil Vren approached the ship, his uniform crisp but understated. His movements were steady, but his eyes betrayed a sharpness that hadn't dulled with time. A small crew of 12 awaited near the boarding ramp, each member clad in dark tactical gear. As Vren passed the group, one of the crew nudged his companion. "Did you hear Lieutenant Jennings is joining us?" he asked quietly. The other smirked. "Sarah?" "Yeah, at least it's not another Sarah Chen." Vren's gaze flicked toward them, his sharp eyes catching the murmurs. The conversation died instantly as the two crew members straightened, recognizing the weight in their captain's expression. Vren's eyes shifted to the corvette. "Get aboard. We leave in 10. Nearby, Corbin and Strauss observed from their station, watching the team through the external feed. Strauss's eyes followed the crew carefully as they boarded. "She'll do fine," Strauss murmured. "She was hand-picked for a reason." Corbin exhaled quietly. "Let's hope Vren hasn't lost his edge." The crew filed aboard the Valiant as Vren exchanged a few final words before disappearing into the corvette's hull. Moments later, the docking clamps released with a mechanical groan, and the ship ascended silently toward the docking bay's exit. As the Valiant slipped into the void of space, Strauss's eyes followed it until it vanished into the blackness. "Godspeed," Corbin muttered under his breath, the faint shimmer of the departing corvette fading from view. The black expanse of space shimmered as the Valiant emerged from hyperspace at the system's outer rim. The transition was seamless, but the crew aboard felt the shift in tension as the ship's engines powered down to a low hum. Captain Phil Vren stood at the observation deck, eyes fixed on the tactical display as the planet loomed distantly ahead. "Keep our signature low," Vren ordered, his voice calm but edged with focus. "We stay dark until we're within the atmosphere." Lieutenant Sarah Jennings, seated at the navigation console, nodded. "Running silent. No signals detected so far. The blockade is holding position closer to the colony." Through the viewport, fragments of debris drifted lazily across the void. The remnants of old mining stations, long abandoned, formed a jagged field along the planet's upper orbit. Vren's gaze narrowed. "Plot a course through the debris. Use it as cover." Jennings's fingers moved across the console, tracing the path of least resistance. "Course laid in. It's tight, but we'll make it." "Good." Vren turned his attention to the crew. "Stay sharp. The blockade may not have eyes everywhere, but we won't get a second chance if they spot us." The Valiant drifted forward, weaving carefully between jagged husks of forgotten infrastructure. The corvette's matte black hull blended with the shadows, masking its movement as they closed the distance to the planet. "Intercepting comms," Jennings announced suddenly. "Short-range bursts, encrypted from the surface." Vren's brow furrowed. "Source?" Jennings isolated the transmission. Faint voices crackled over the speakers. "Prisoners moved to primary encampment. No communications allowed beyond this channel. Reinforcements expected within the next cycle." The message cut abruptly. Vren's hands clenched at his sides. "They're holding people down there," Vren said quietly, eyes narrowing on the display. Jennings glanced up. Could be the colonists or allied personnel. Either way, they're not just sitting on that planet. Vren exhaled, the weight of the situation settling further on his shoulders. "Adjust our entry vector. We're landing near the old mining facilities. If they're using the colony for labor, those shafts might give us an entry point." Jennings nodded and adjusted their trajectory. Descending to low orbit, blockade still hasn't altered course. As the Valiant breached the planet's atmosphere, turbulence rocked the ship briefly before stabilizers kicked in. The clouds thinned, unveiling a land marked by deep fissures and winding scars that stretched across the terrain like veins. Fractured buildings rose from the ground at odd angles, their metallic frames twisted and darkened by fire. In the distance, faint plumes of smoke spiraled upward from scattered outposts under alien occupation. The corvette descended along the cragged surface, skimming just above mountain ridges and rocky outcroppings to avoid detection. "There," Vren pointed. "Set down near that ridge. We'll approach on foot from the mining tunnels." Jennings brought the ship down softly, landing gear engaging with a soft hiss of decompressing hydraulics. The crew gathered at the deployment bay, donning light tactical gear. Vren stood at the head of the group, fastening the last strap of his harness. "This isn't a rescue mission yet. We gather intel, confirm the colonists' location, and stay out of sight. Clear?" A unified nod followed. The bay doors opened, revealing the barren landscape stretching ahead. "Let's move." The team advanced swiftly, descending into the abandoned mining tunnels. The path twisted into the earth, cold air thick with dust and remnants of old machinery. Every step echoed faintly in the silence, the weight of the mission settling heavier with each passing moment. Jennings activated a small handheld scanner. Minimal life signs detected ahead. Nothing large, could be scattered survivors or automated systems. Vren signaled for the team to press on. As they navigated deeper into the tunnels, faint vibrations resonated through the walls, the pulse of distant machinery. "Someone's working these mines," Sergeant Glover muttered, his voice rough as he crouched to inspect a rusted rail. "Or they're being forced to," Corporal Darnell added, his eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. Vren replied, his voice low. "Either way, we keep moving, eyes open." The tunnel opened ahead into a cavernous expanse, faint lights flickering along the far wall where alien structures had been erected. Silhouettes moved in the distance, tall and slender, their limbs stretching at angles that seemed almost deliberate, as if their forms were designed for intimidation rather than function, with helmets that narrowed into sharp ridges along the top. The dim light reflected faintly off their segmented armor, giving them an insectile appearance without the fluidity of natural movement. Vren motioned for the crew to hold position, his eyes locked on the unfolding scene. We wait for nightfall. Then we find out what's really happening here. The air cooled as silence crept over the ridge. Shadows stretched long and thin across the rocks, fading with the last glimmers of light. The crew settled into the stillness, breath shallow, weapons at rest but ready. The stars arrived without fanfare, small at first, then swelling to a silent ocean above them. A faint breeze whispered through the camp below, carrying the distant murmur of guards switching posts. Vren rose without a word. The others followed. Boots moved without sound, tracing the edge of darkness as if the night itself carried them forward. The narrow tunnels twisted like veins beneath the planet's surface, the cold air heavy with the scent of rusted metal. Captain Phil Vren led his team through the dark passages, their footsteps muffled by the rocky terrain beneath them. Faint beams from their helmets cut through the shadows, illuminating ancient rails that once transported ore from deep within the mines. "Keep the lights low," Vren whispered, raising a hand to halt the group. The soft hum of alien machinery reverberated through the stone walls, distant but unmistakable. "Sound carries far down here." Lieutenant Jennings knelt beside a terminal embedded into the rock face. Its screen flickered weakly, casting a faint blue glow. She brushed away a layer of grime, revealing alien script intertwined with remnants of human interface code. "I can tap into the external surveillance feeds," Jennings said. "Might give us a glimpse of what's happening topside." Vren crouched beside her, his gaze flicking toward the tunnel entrance behind them. The rest of the team formed a perimeter, weapons held steady, eyes scanning the dark. The faint flicker of Jennings' screen reflected in his eyes as grainy images crackled to life. The feed shifted to a wide courtyard, its perimeter lined with hastily erected barricades and watchtowers. Colonists, humans, and a scattering of allied species stood in organized rows, their faces hollow under the alien floodlights. Tall figures in segmented armor paced behind them, arms slung low but ready. Vren's grip tightened on the edge of the console. He recognized the crest emblazoned across their shoulders, the mark of the blockade fleet. The image distorted, flickered, and then sharpened again. One of the armored figures barked something in its native tongue, gesturing sharply toward the colonists. The line broke apart. Several prisoners pulled forward under heavy guard. "No," Jennings muttered, her voice tight as she leaned closer to the screen. The prisoners were led to an open pit freshly dug into the dirt. A trio of drones hovered nearby, their lenses swiveling as they captured every movement. "Are they?" one of the soldiers began, but the scene continued unfolding. The prisoners were handed crude shovels and forced to dig under the harsh glare of the floodlights. The Sarnak guards stood watch, unmoving as the colonists scraped at the earth in silence. Minutes passed. The prisoners' movement slowed, shovels slipping from weary hands as they backed away from the pit's edge. A sharp crack broke the quiet. One of the colonists crumpled to the ground, the shovel clattering beside him. Jennings stiffened, her grip tightening around the console. A single shot rang out, then another. The survivors dropped to their knees, shovels falling from trembling hands as they pleaded beneath raised rifles. The screen cut to static. Vren rose to his feet, his jaw tight, but his eyes steady. "We're moving. I want eyes on that camp before the next shift change." "Sir," one of the soldiers asked cautiously, "are we engaging?" Vren paused, his gaze lingering on the static-laden screen for half a beat longer. "Not yet," he growled, the words rumbling low in his throat. "We find out where the remaining colonists are first. Then we move." The team pressed forward, the tunnels narrowing as they climbed toward the surface. The sound of boots against metal grates faded beneath the growing hum of alien activity above. After several minutes, The path opened to a grated vent leading to the outskirts of the encampment. Vren peered through the slats, scanning the field below. The courtyard from the surveillance feed stretched before him, now empty save for a few lingering figures near the watchtowers. Jennings edged beside him, her voice low. "I count 6 guards patrolling the perimeter. Automated turrets near the northern fence line." Vren nodded. "We'll use the tunnels to circle the camp's edge. I want a full layout of the area by nightfall." As the team slipped back into the shadows, the faint echo of a distant horn rang out over the colony. Vren's hand lingered on the tunnel wall for a moment. He didn't need to see the execution to know it had resumed. Phil Vren crouched low behind a jagged outcrop of rock, adjusting the frequency dial on his wrist communicator with slow, deliberate movements. The faint hum of distant floodlights swept methodically across the encampment below, chasing shadows over the barren field where prisoners stood, heads bowed beneath the weight of silent orders. Behind him, Jennings settled into position, the sleek frame of her plasma carbine resting on the outcrop's edge. The faint glow of the weapon's energy core pulsed softly in the dark, her fingers resting near the trigger plate. Her breath was steady, but her eyes, locked on the distant guard towers, held the quiet intensity of someone waiting for the inevitable. "Channel secured," Vren murmured, his voice a low thread against the stillness. He keyed in the encryption sequence, each click of the dial punctuating the heavy quiet. A tight band transmission slipped into the veins of the tunnels beneath them, riding the same hidden paths that had brought them this far. Static whispered in his earpiece, fraying the silence. For a moment, the line seemed fragile, like it might dissolve entirely under the weight of what lay ahead. Then, it held steady. "Vren to Valiant. Report is ready. Patch this through to the fleet," he said, voice cold and controlled. "We have visual confirmation. Colonists are being executed. This is not a show of force. It's extermination." Vren's gaze flicked to Jennings. She didn't move, but he caught the faintest shift of her grip against the carbine's stabilizer grip. Her eyes never left the encampment. A faint reply followed a second later. "Copy, Captain. Relaying to command now. Stand by." Vren cut the channel and lowered his head, scanning the perimeter once more. The Sarnak soldiers, tall, rigid figures in black segmented armor, moved with practiced efficiency, corralling the prisoners deeper into the facility. Beyond the encampment's perimeter, the faint silhouette of towering anti-aircraft turrets lined the horizon. "Let's keep it clean," he muttered, as much to himself as to her. Minutes passed in silence until Vren's communicator buzzed softly. He pressed his hand to his ear. "Vren, this is Admiral Corbin. We have your report. I take it diplomacy has failed." "It never started, sir," Vren replied. "If we wait, they'll erase every last colonist." There was a pause on the line. Corbin's voice returned, quieter but resolute. "Understood. We move immediately. Stand by for assault preparation. Return to the rendezvous coordinates and hold position. Corbin out." Vren rose from his crouch and gestured to Jennings. "We're done here. Let's move." "They've fortified well," Jennings whispered. "Any assault is going to bleed." "They're not expecting one," Vren replied. "That's their mistake." They navigated back through the narrow tunnels in silence, the weight of what they had witnessed settling in with each step. The tunnel's cold air carried the distant hum of machinery from above, growing faint as they distanced themselves from the camp. Emerging from the tunnel's mouth, Vren signaled the rest of the infiltration team to fall in. They ascended the rocky ridge, where the Valiant lay cloaked beneath the jagged overhang of the canyon, its dark hull masked by the rugged landscape. From a distance, the corvette appeared little more than a shadow among the rocks. Jennings tapped the approach beacon, and the boarding ramp descended with a soft hiss, blending seamlessly into the surroundings as they slipped aboard. Back aboard the Valiant, the bridge was shrouded in dim light, the hum of instruments the only sound breaking the silence. Vren stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the crew. Each member focused, their movements measured, the weight of the impending battle pressing down on them. He approached the holotable at the center of the room, where a tactical map flickered with shifting data. Ships repositioning like pieces on a board, slowly tightening the noose around the blockade. "Status?" Vren asked, eyes narrowing on the icons that marked the advancing human fleet. Beyond the viewport, distant vessels shimmered faintly against the void, their silhouettes drifting in tight formation. Corbin's flagship sliced forward, a dark spearhead against the stars, while escort ships fanned out in disciplined arcs, threading silently into the blockade's outer perimeter. Jennings leaned over the terminal, fingers gliding over the console as reports scrolled in rapid succession. Corbin's lead fleet is locking into position. Strauss's auxiliary forces are sweeping in from the eastern corridor, keeping low, just outside sensor range. They'll be ready when we make our move. Vren nodded. They'll sweep in once the initial assault hits. It'll keep the blockade busy. An officer turned from the communications console. Incoming message from Admiral Corbin. He's patched through to the Chancellor. Vren stepped forward as Corbin's face materialized on the holotable. Chancellor Elias Rennick stood beside him, arms crossed tightly. "Captain Vren," Rennick's voice carried through the speakers. "I've received your report. I trust your assessment. We're not giving them time to fortify further." "They won't expect us to strike directly," Corbin added. "We hit hard and fast. The infiltration team will guide the main assault." Vren met Corbin's gaze through the projection. "We'll be ready when the first salvo hits, sir." Rennick's expression hardened. "This isn't just about the colony, Captain. When this is over, the Council will lay the blame squarely on us. We'll bear this alone." Vren held his gaze. "Understood, Chancellor." The transmission cut out. Silence lingered on the bridge, heavy and unspoken. Vren exhaled slowly, the weight of Rennick's words pressing down like iron. There was no turning back. "Prep the team," he said quietly. "We're kicking the door in." The silence of space shattered as the assault fleet pierced the system's edge. Warships advanced in tight formation, their hulls reflecting the pale light of the distant star. At the vanguard, Admiral Gregor Corbin's command vessel, the Resolute, led the charge. Smaller escort ships spread into a wide arc behind it, positioning to intercept the alien blockade. "Fleet holding steady," reported the tactical officer. "No immediate response from their forward patrols." Corbin's eyes narrowed as he studied the flickering projections before him. The enemy's outer defenses lay dormant, unaware of the storm bearing down on them. "They'll see us soon enough," Corbin said, his voice calm but heavy with inevitability. "All ships, advance to attack range. Prepare to fire on my mark." In the distance, flashes of energy flared across the void as the first volleys of ion cannons lit up the black. The alien blockade stirred as their ships scrambled to form defensive lines. Corbin watched the sluggish response unfold. To the far edge of the system, Admiral Strauss's auxiliary fleet held formation, poised to cut off any escape routes once the enemy made their retreat. Far below, Phil Vren and his infiltration team crept forward through the mining tunnels. The faint glow of the orbital battle flickered through cracks in the earth, casting faint tremors beneath their feet. "They've started," Jennings whispered, pressing her back against the stone, her plasma carbine held close. The rhythmic hum of bombardments thrummed faintly overhead. Vren's eyes stayed fixed ahead, scanning for movement. "That's the distraction. We stay on mission." Their footsteps were light against the damp ground as the team advanced deeper. Darnell shot a glance at the faint mechanical flicker through the tunnel's gaps. "Feels too quiet," he muttered. "It always does before the storm," Glover replied, tightening his grip on his weapon. At the tunnel's mouth, Vren raised a fist, halting the squad. A faint glow from a security panel painted the rock walls ahead. Jennings moved swiftly, tools in hand. "Give me a minute." Vren crouched beside her, keeping his rifle aimed at the corridor. The hum of machinery echoed faintly from above. Jennings worked with precise efficiency, and within moments, the door slid open with a muted hiss. "We're in," she whispered. No alarms. Vren stepped through first, sweeping the corridor beyond. Stacks of supply crates and dormant machinery lined the walls. The rest of the team followed, disappearing into the facility's shadows. Overhead, faint footsteps rattled along catwalks as alien patrols shifted their positions. In orbit, the battle escalated. Sarnak warships clustered around the colony's equator, unleashing furious volleys toward the human fleet. Corbin's Resolute fired relentlessly, ion cannons cutting into an enemy cruiser's hull until flames spiraled from its engines. "Enemy formation breaking apart," the tactical officer called out. "Some ships pulling back, but their dreadnoughts are holding near the colony's atmosphere." Corbin's gaze locked onto the holographic display. The blockade's center of gravity hung low in orbit, its heaviest vessels forming an iron curtain above the colony. "Pursue and pin them down," Corbin ordered. "Strauss, sweep in and cut off their flank. Don't let them regroup." On the surface, Vren's team slipped further into the outpost's lower levels. Jennings knelt by a console, linking the uplink to the fleet. "This is Vren," he said through the secure line. "We're inside. No heavy resistance yet. Advancing to the central hub." Corbin's voice crackled in reply. "Copy that, Captain. We're pushing forward here. Keep moving." They wove between steel columns, keeping to the shadows. The corridor ahead spilled with faint voices. Vren signaled, and the squad flattened along the walls. Through a gap, Vren glimpsed a patrol, a handful of alien soldiers gathered near a communications array, their postures relaxed as the distant battle occupied their attention. Jennings edged forward, already reaching for her tools. "I can cut their comms." Vren nodded. His rifle stayed trained on the patrol. Seconds stretched until Jennings gave a small nod. "Arrays down. They're blind." "Good," Vren whispered. "Let's keep them that way." The team pressed deeper into the outpost, shadows swallowing them as the battle above raged on. Beneath the surface of the colony, the tunnels pulsed faintly with the distant tremor of battle above. Phil Vren's team moved like shadows, their footsteps absorbed by the heavy stone and rusted rails of the abandoned mining complex. The soft glow of Jennings' datapad illuminated the path ahead as she monitored the live feeds hijacked from the alien surveillance network. "Patrols are thin along the eastern quadrant," Jennings whispered, angling the screen to Vren. Red dots clustered along the western perimeter of the facility, but large sections deeper into the colony remained unguarded. "They're consolidating forces near the primary outpost," Vren said, studying the map. "That gives us room to move." His eyes flicked to the rest of the team. "Stay tight. We break into 3 units from here." He signaled 2 officers forward. "Barton, take point through the southern conduit and hit the comm relays. Jennings, you and I will breach the north substation and cut power to the orbital defense grids. Lorne, I want your team near the supply depot. Place charges to block reinforcements from entering the refinery sector. Minimal engagement. Silent, if possible." Each soldier gave a curt nod. Words were unnecessary. They had rehearsed this countless times, though the stakes had never felt this immediate. Jennings adjusted her gear. "And if the Sarnak catch on early?" "They won't," Vren said. "Because we'll be gone before they realize." The tunnels spat Jennings and Vren out into a corridor dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The air was stale, thick with the smell of oil and scorched metal. Machinery lined the walls, their dormant frames wrapped in cables that trailed overhead like lifeless veins. Jennings knelt by an access panel and began working the interface. Sparks flickered as she bypassed the alien software, her brow furrowing in concentration. Vren kept his plasma repeater raised, scanning the corridor ahead. "How long?" 2 minutes, maybe less." From further down the hall, faint voices echoed, harsh and guttural. "Sarnak patrol." Vren raised a fist, signaling for silence. He motioned Jennings to continue as he stepped forward, keeping low against the wall. The patrol passed a junction just ahead, 2 figures moving in tandem, their elongated arms slung across their backs. Vren tracked them through the scope, but held his fire, watching as they disappeared into an adjoining corridor. Jennings exhaled slowly. Done. Power grid access granted. I can overload the conduits when ready. Good. Hold position. Vren activated his comm. Barton, status. Static answered for a second before Barton's voice crackled through. Relay charges set. Moving to the extraction point now. No contact. Lorne, all charges planted. Minimal resistance near the depot. We're clear for detonation. Vren glanced at Jennings. It's time. Cut the grid. Jennings entered the command. A low hum vibrated through the corridor as the lights flickered and died. For a moment, the outpost plunged into darkness. Then, from the distance, alarms began to wail. They know, Jennings said, rising to her feet. Then we're already behind schedule. Vren keyed the detonator. Explosions rippled through the outer sectors of the facility. Plumes of fire licked at the sky, visible even from deep within the tunnels. The refinery depot collapsed in a spray of metal and stone, sealing the pathways that led to the central outpost. Above ground, Corbin's assault fleet intensified its bombardment, exploiting the confusion below. Strike wings from Strauss's auxiliary fleet weaved through the colony's airspace, targeting the outer defenses left exposed by the sabotage. Jennings led Vren through the tunnels, emerging into a service yard on the outskirts of the colony's detention zones. From behind the cover of scattered machinery, they could see the prisoners, humans and allied species alike, gathered in clusters under Sarnak guard. They haven't moved the colonists yet, Jennings whispered. Vren activated his comm. We have a visual on the colonists, awaiting orders for extraction. Corbin's voice came swiftly. Stand by. We're breaking the last of their defensive lines. Secure the civilians and prepare for transport. Vren's gaze lingered on the distant horizon, where the faint shimmer of fire traced the edges of the Sarnak blockade. He turned to his team, voice low but resolute. We end this quietly. Disable the guards, secure the civilians, and wait for the dropships. We're not losing anyone today. As the team fanned out, faint tremors rolled beneath their feet, subtle at first, but growing stronger. Above, streaks of light pierced the sky like falling stars, descending rapidly toward the colony. The air grew heavier, humming with the distant thunder of orbital cannons. The sky above the colony ignited as the fleet of the United Earth Defense bore down, weapons tearing through the thinning defensive perimeter. Plumes of fire and metal spiraled toward the surface as the Sarnak vessels fractured under the relentless assault. Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Gregor Corbin monitored the battle through the flickering display surrounding him. His gaze shifted between the orbital engagements and the data streaming from Vren's infiltration team below. Enemy cruisers falling back to regroup around the command station, the tactical officer reported. They're thinning at the northern orbital approach. Corbin's eyes narrowed. Press the advantage. Dispatch Strauss's wing to intercept their retreat. I want every escape vector sealed. The officer relayed the order, and moments later, auxiliary ships emerged from the shadows of the planetary rings, carving into the fleeing Sarnak vessels with surgical precision. Energy bolts cut the darkness in clean, calculated bursts, each strike coordinated with the next. They're trying to break for the outer belt, Strauss's voice crackled over the comms. We'll keep them contained. Don't let them reorganize, Corbin said, eyes fixed on the rotating projection of the enemy formation. They're ours. On the ground, Vren watched as the distant horizon flickered with explosions in the upper atmosphere. He could hear the faint hum of descending dropships behind him as the last of the prisoners were guided into secure zones. Jennings knelt by the security terminal, her eyes narrowing as the data scrolled across her display. They're pulling forces from the central refinery, she said. They know they're losing orbit. Good. Let them panic, Vren replied, moving to the edge of the barricade. His eyes scanned the southern perimeter, where the final Sarnak stronghold still held firm. We'll finish this on the ground before they can dig in. Jennings disconnected the terminal and joined him, Ioncaster at the ready. Vren activated his comm. Admiral, we're in position. Targeting the last energy nodes powering their defense grid, awaiting final sync. Corbin's voice came through clear. Understood. Strauss's forces are pinning down their escape routes. Time your strikes with the next bombardment cycle. Vren nodded to his team. Prepare the charges. As Jennings and Barton moved to plant more thermal imploders along the conduit junctions, Vren keyed into the tactical feed displaying the layout of the remaining Sarnak defenses. He watched as the enemy movements grew erratic, pockets of resistance collapsing as communications scrambled. Jennings returned to his side. Charges set. Vren's finger hovered over the detonator. Wait for the signal. High above, the Resolute unleashed another wave of focused fire. The colony's defense turrets, already battered, flickered as their energy shields crumbled under the sustained attack. Now! Corbin's voice rang out. Vren pressed the trigger. Explosions rippled through the colony, severing power grids and detonating storage depots in synchronized bursts. The remaining anti-air batteries darkened, their targeting systems fried by the cascading overload. In the distance, the Sarnak line buckled. Jennings smirked, watching the grid collapse. They're blind. Vren keyed into the fleet channel. The defense grid is down. You have a clear path to the surface. Copy that, Corbin replied. Drop ships inbound. Begin mop-up operations. Sarnak forces scrambled, retreating deeper into the colony's subterranean infrastructure as the UED strike teams descended. Vren's unit moved quickly, sweeping through the outer corridors and cutting down the last stragglers holding their ground. Jennings stopped short at a sealed door, motioning for Vren. Their command post is here. Last heat signatures are concentrated inside. Vren approached, placing a hand against the cold metal surface. We end this now. He stepped back, signaling Barton to breach. The shaped charge hissed as it ignited, the blast forcing the door open in a shower of sparks. Inside, Sarnak officers stood frozen, weapons halfway to their hands. Vren's team entered fast, disarming and securing the room in moments. As silence settled, Vren approached the central terminal, scanning the logs. His gaze hardened. Jennings, secure these records. I want everything encrypted and sent to Corbin immediately. Jennings frowned. What is it? Vren's expression darkened. Proof. They knew exactly how to exploit the colony's weaknesses. He didn't say the rest, but Jennings understood. Someone on the council had betrayed them. Above the colony, the last Sarnak warship fractured under the final salvo from the Resolute. The battle was over, but the real war, the one fought in shadows and politics, was only beginning. Dust still lingered in the air as the last of the Sarnak resistance collapsed. Smoke coiled into the sky from the remnants of their command posts, reduced to twisted metal and debris under the precision of orbital strikes. Below, UED dropships descended in waves, sleek hulls cutting through the clouds, touching down in the scarred fields that once housed colonial infrastructure. Phil Vren stood near the southern perimeter, watching as his team coordinated with ground forces to secure the area. The liberated colonists shuffled forward in clusters, expressions a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. Medics moved swiftly among them, distributing supplies and assessing injuries. Some of the prisoners, hollow-eyed and frail, leaned heavily on others for support. Jennings approached, her arm over her shoulder. Evac zones are set. Last transport should be ready in 5. Vren nodded. His gaze drifted across the makeshift encampment forming near the landing site. Despite the victory, the atmosphere felt subdued. Most of the colonists were already aboard, but search teams continued to sweep the outer sectors for any who might still be missing. They look like they haven't eaten in days, Jennings added, her voice low. Some of the kids barely react when the medics check them. They've been through more than we know, Vren replied. He paused, watching as a child clung to his mother's leg, wide-eyed but silent. We'll get them out of here. That's what matters. From above, the shadow of Admiral Corbin's shuttle crept across the field, settling near the main security checkpoint. Vren met him at the ramp as the Admiral disembarked. Good work down here, Corbin said without ceremony, his eyes scanning the refugees. But we're not done. I need you to sweep the remaining Sarnak outposts for intel. Anything they left behind might confirm how this blockade held for so long. Vren nodded, his jaw tightening. We already know the answer to that. We do, Corbin replied, lowering his voice. But we need proof. I want something we can take to the council. A faint tremor of unease settled in Vren's gut, but he only responded with a curt, understood. Vren's boots carried him deeper into the colony's lower levels, each step heavy with the weight of Corbin's unspoken fears. Jennings and Barton trailed closely behind, their eyes sweeping the dim corridors ahead. The tunnels felt colder now. The hum of alien machinery long faded into uneasy silence. They knew this was coming. Vren had suspected as much when Corbin voiced his concerns. Still, seeing it laid bare twisted something in his chest. Jennings slowed near a sealed terminal, brushing away the thin layer of dust and debris that clung to its surface. The faint glow of the inactive screen blinked to life beneath her touch. This one's still active, she said quietly, kneeling beside the console. Her tools worked quickly, prying open the interface. Let me see if there's anything left to salvage. Vren nodded once, eyes scanning the corridor as Barton took position at his side. The muffled sound of their breathing filled the space between the soft clicks of Jennings, bypassing the terminal's security. The system hummed softly, unlocking with a faint chime. Jennings's eyes narrowed as streams of data flooded the display. Got something, she muttered, her brows furrowing. Her fingers hovered over the interface, hesitating just slightly. Vren caught the shift. What is it? Jennings exhaled through her nose. This encryption, it's not Sarnak. It's council level. Vren's gaze hardened, the confirmation landing with little surprise. You're sure? His voice lowered, but there was no doubt in his tone. Jennings nodded grimly, expanding the file. No way around it. Whoever fed the Sarnak intel on the colony's defenses had access to top-tier systems. This came from inside. Barton cursed under his breath. They had everything. No wonder they dug in so fast. Vren's eyes lingered on the screen, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere, to the faces that sat around the council chambers. One of them had made this possible. Secure the data, Vren ordered, his tone cutting through the weight in the air. Corbin needs to see it for himself. Jennings immediately started the transfer, her focus sharp. Barton glanced down the corridor, his grip tightening on his weapon. You think Corbin expected this? Vren didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the alien symbols cascading across the screen. He wouldn't have sent us down here if he didn't, Vren finally said. Barton shook his head. Hell of a thing. Someone up there's got a lot to answer for. Vren's jaw tightened. He tapped his comm. Admiral, we found something. You need to see this. Minutes later, Corbin's figure emerged through the haze of dust that lingered in the corridor. Jennings transferred the encrypted files to a secure drive and handed it to him. Corbin studied the data in silence. When he finally spoke, his tone was grim. I'll forward this directly to the Chancellor. No one else. Vren stepped back, letting Corbin pass. He exchanged a glance with Jennings, who remained unusually quiet. This isn't over, she muttered, as Corbin disappeared down the tunnel. No, Vren agreed. Not even close. As the last of the colonists boarded the evacuation vessels, Vren watched the horizon, where plumes of smoke marked the end of the Sarnak occupation. But his thoughts lingered elsewhere, on encrypted files and the unanswered questions that followed them. Above, the UED fleet remained in high orbit, their presence a silent reminder that victory often came with new battles waiting just beyond the horizon. Hours later, far from the scorched fields of the colony, Chancellor Elias Rennick stepped into the cold light of the council chamber. He stepped through the arched entrance, the faint hum of the holographic displays flickering to life at his arrival. Around him, alien consuls and dignitaries filled the crescent-shaped hall, their eyes tracking his every movement as he approached the center podium. The room was colder than he remembered, as if the very air responded to the weight of what he carried. In his hand, A single data drive glinted under the pale lights, compact, yet heavier than anything he had held in years. Admiral Gregor Corbin's face lingered in his thoughts as he ascended the steps. The Admiral had said little after receiving the files recovered from the Sarnak Command Center, only giving a slight nod before departing. Now Rennick stood alone to present the truth. The Speaker of the Council, a towering figure from the Ravos Dominion, raised a hand to still the murmurs circulating the chamber. His dual-pupiled eyes blinked slowly, betraying no emotion as he regarded Rennick. "Chancellor, you returned to this chamber ahead of the Council's summons. Explain yourself." Rennick stepped forward, setting the data drive on the illuminated table that stretched between him and the gathered consuls. "I carry evidence collected from the Sarnak blockade," he said, his voice steady but cold. "Proof that this attack was orchestrated with knowledge obtained from within this council." A ripple of hushed conversation swept through the chamber. Some consuls exchanged uneasy glances, others sat rigid, stone-faced. Consul Nezra of the Ulran Syndicate leaned forward, her pale violet skin almost luminescent under the chamber's lights. "You're accusing one of us, Chancellor?" Her tone held the faintest edge of disbelief, but there was no mistaking the challenge in her gaze. "I'm not here to accuse," Rennick replied. "The data speaks for itself." He tapped the interface, and the projection expanded. Streams of encrypted communication unraveled above the table, revealing schematics, access codes, and defense weaknesses of the human colony. Classified information, accessible only by high-ranking officials within the Council. "This," Rennick continued, "is the level of access the Sarnak had. Someone in this room handed it to them." The speaker's expression darkened. "You make dangerous claims without presenting a name, Chancellor." Rennick's eyes scanned the room slowly, deliberately meeting the gaze of every consul present. Some returned his stare without hesitation. Others shifted in their seats. "I don't have a name," Rennick admitted, "but the betrayal is evident. While we debate endlessly, human lives are lost. Our allies are left in graves dug by the very hand that this council's hesitation allows to persist." A few consuls shifted uncomfortably, but others, like Consul Threll of the Makari, met his words with disdain. "We operate on consensus, Chancellor, not impulsive action." Rennick's jaw tightened. "Consensus won't bring those people back." Threll opened his mouth to retort, but Rennick stepped forward, cutting him off. His voice dropped, resonating across the chamber with unrelenting weight. "You turned away while innocent lives were executed. You would have let that colony fall if humanity hadn't acted. We didn't wait for permission because permission would have come too late." Silence followed. The statement hung between them like a blade, cutting deeper with every second that passed. The speaker's gaze lingered on the projection before him. Slowly, he deactivated the display with a wave of his hand, leaving only the data drive resting on the table. "You understand the implications of this, Chancellor?" "I do," Rennick answered. The speaker's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet you acted regardless." "Because someone had to." Rennick's tone left no room for doubt. The chamber remained still. No further questions came. The consuls, one by one, lowered their gazes or turned their attention elsewhere. No acknowledgement, no applause. Only silence. Rennick retrieved the drive, pocketing it as he descended the steps. His footsteps echoed faintly through the hall as he made his way toward the exit. As he passed the rows of seated consuls, his eyes met Nezra's once more. Her gaze lingered but offered no challenge this time. At the chamber's threshold, Rennick paused. Without turning back, he spoke clearly, his words sharp and direct. "We'll find the traitor, with or without your help." The doors hissed open, and Rennick stepped into the corridor, leaving behind a council in uneasy silence, fully aware that humanity's resolve was far from an empty threat. Hey there again. I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.